This is an update on our greenhouse. It's February the 3rd, about 60 degrees outside, and as you can see, everything has managed to withstand the cold weather that we've had over the last couple of days when it was in the 30s at night. Here are our float tanks. We've got 2 trays there with floaters in it, growing all types of lettuce and basil, which as you can see is just doing extremely well. Over here next we've got a couple of gravel tanks with bell siphons in them. There are handling our pepper plants. The peppers are doing really well. We've had some Brussels sprouts that we were trying to grow. So far we haven't been successful with those. Our broccoli did well this year. Now we're moving into where we've got our fish. It's a 150-gallon Rubbermaid container. We've got about 35 tilapia in there at this point. We pump up, we go through our swirl filter. As you can see, and the swirl filter then feeds the grow beds. All gravity fed once we pump up out of the fish tank into the swirl filter. And we proceed back. We've got 2 more float tanks here. The first 2 beds are floaters. Then we get into 2 more gravel tanks. And the last 2 are gravel. And hopefully the gravel is working as a good biofilter to help filter out the water. From there we go into a couple of grow trays where we've got our tomato plants. We've got them potted with hydroton, and we just constantly keep the water flowing through these tanks here. It's constantly going in and constantly draining out. So we maintain a constant level of water in the tanks, and the tomato plants seem to like that situation. As you can see, we've got 4 tanks that are operating off of that setup there. 2 of these plant tanks are actually going off of a 55-gallon aquarium that we have set up. And we're hoping this will be our breed tank, where we've got our tilapia in there, hoping that they'll be spawning soon and producing us a good number of eggs to replenish our inventory with. Like this. We've seen some activity, but so far no success yet. But the weather and the water might have been too cold to really promote too much activity. Back in the back, we've got another tray at just constant water level. We are constantly pumping in and continuously draining. So it's not a bell siphon, it's not really a floater, but it's just a constant water change going through the plants. And this is where we've been putting our young plants to get them started. Over here we've got just a catfish in this tank, and we've got actually got a floater on top of it just for filtering the water for the catfish. We've got a small tank here. We actually put some really small tilapia in there to try to isolate them. Just to keep them away from the bigger tilapia. Come around this way. We've got our totes that we actually are using fertilizer in rather than the fish. We've got some where we've grown off nutrients, and they've done extremely well too. This is the way we started with just Rubbermaid totes. And we planted everything in the totes and with the hydroton and just grew this way. And when it worked out to be successful, that's when we started experimenting then with getting into raising the fish to fertilize our plants with, and that has worked out extremely well too. But either way, the fertilizer works extremely well for the growing, or the fish water has worked really well for us. The advantage of the fish water for nutrients is that you can feed the fish when they're grown, and the cost of raising the fish is cheaper than buying fertilizer for the other tanks. So, but this is a good way to get started, just with some inexpensive Rubbermaid totes, drill holes in the top, put your net pots down inside there, get your seeds, and you're ready to start growing. Anybody on their small patio could plant this out back and have a nice crop of lettuce and squash and other products during the growing season, and be well rewarded for very little effort. We found that this is a whole lot easier way to garden than getting out and having to dig up the soil every year and constantly water and pull weeds. And then eventually you'll wind up building maybe a small greenhouse like we did to accommodate all of the plants that we've been able to supply off of the nutrients that we've got in the system now. And while we're working on it now, we are presently getting ready to expand again. We've got a 150-gallon Rubbermaid tank we're using for our fish now, but we've got a 410-gallon tank that we will be setting up in the very near future, hopefully for our fish population to keep expanding. And at that point, we will also be having to increase the size of our grow bed space to handle all the additional nutrient that we will be picking up from the added fish. So this will be a busy year to add on to our greenhouse and get the second fish tank going. And then we'll have a grow out tank plus a tank for the babies. We'll probably put the babies in the 150-gallon tank and do the 400-gallon tank for the grow out, which will support a good sized number of grow beds here in the near future. So happy gardening.